Do you want to start off? I feel like you deserve it.
I've earned this one. Hello, welcome to Conscious Convo, episode number 27.
28.
No, episode 28. There we are. You're with me, Craig Seaton.
And Chet Carson. And it's been a good couple of weeks since the last time I saw you, mate. So how has your trip been? Let's talk about that first. So basically, before we've even started this podcast, we've done it again. We've had half of our conversation already done. So we may have to repeat a few of the things we've said, but also we will go into new things as well. So we'll start off with Craig's time away with his friend. And yeah, over to you, Craig.
Yeah, man, I went off to Lincoln. So that's east of England. Got a little Airbnb there, just out in the middle of farmland, beautiful space, just a little yurt, a little chilly at night. But yeah, just a bit of time to get away and reinstall my practices, really. You know, having coming out of the last couple of months, thrown off a little bit, really, with my intentions and where I'm heading, and getting a bit hedonistic, I suppose, like stuck in just a stale, stagnant kind of feel behind me. And having talked earlier, I've mentioned it on the podcast, but you know, doing so much at the start of lockdown and giving out as much advice and or help and breathwork as I could with the Instagram thing, and then turning that into the online community. I'm really smashing all the practices, so doing the yoga, breathwork, meditation, but too hard. Again, know yourself and me, I'm the pendulum, I'll go one way or the other. And then I had that big slump where I was doing nothing. You
came off social media for a bit as well.
Yeah, I did that. That was part of it as well. It was like the reinstalling of like, where's my head at? What am I thinking? And what things are distracting me and pulling me away? And even that, it was still part of the process of me uncovering what I was discovering in the week away. Like, where is my lack of clarity, and what is the message for myself? Like, where am I heading? Not even that. It doesn't even have to go that far. It's like, why am I not feeling uplifted? Why am I not feeling a sense of connection or not purpose or meaning, but energy? Like, it felt very stagnant. So yeah, going out there, my whole goal was my friend Reese. Shout out to Reese, like he, phenomenal guy, got a really good mind on him. One of those few people who are really into the spiritual life and to follow it through and understand what it means. And he's a very good way of speaking, very big heart for compassion to help people understand. And there's no problems with chopping up an ego, if you need it, which I think is a very valuable quality in your friend, not someone who's just going to be like, oh yeah, I understand. Or is that okay? It's like, maybe you need a slap, maybe you need to relook at things. Yeah, he's very good like that. And he's a big fan of Sadhguru as well.
Right.
So.
They all are. They all are. These freaks like us.
Yeah, that's what it's about, man. And having that clarity of a teacher, there's a reason I think we're pulled to certain people. And there's so much out there in the spiritual world, like who do you follow, who do you listen to? And Sadhguru has always been one that's always been a light there, always coming back to his teachings, no matter what the myriad of other distractions are out there. It's his name is always around there. His teachings are always very pure to me, and he feels the same. Anyway, yeah, he was saying like, I'm off for a retreat, do you want to come? I was like, yeah, okay, let's go. We'll get out into nature as far as we can. And for me, it was much more about finding my connection again and finding what works for me, and to find that uplift. And I realised really I've been in such a funk, stuck and not seeing how down I was feeling about stuff. And this can happen in the industry that we're in, or trying to push out the positivity to other people to help lift others up. But sometimes, you for me at least, it's remembering that I always want to feel authentic with it. And if I'm in a shitty place or I'm not feeling good, I want to know why. And sometimes you just got to put everything on hold, hence the social media distractions, and also learning how to reintegrate that. But yeah, this was very much for me to get into my practices again, because not doing anything for the last few weeks, or sitting down for meditation but not being fully invested, you just sat there and kind of waiting for the timing to go by without actually doing the practice, which is so easy for us to do. So this was like, right, let's get dedicated again. And it was every day we were doing the practices. We'll do them in the morning, we'll do them in the evening. It'll be mantra, meditation, walks, so talking meditation as well, which is a great part, like the Zazen aspect of the talking. You're not, it's a meditation in the fact that you're not thinking. Like these, they're meditative in the sense we're just talking it through. We're not pre-planning the thoughts as such. We have bullet points and whatnot, but when you're in depth of conversation, it's purifying for the body, it's purifying for the mind, and you uncover in that way in self-reflection. So it was great just to be out there eating very clean, maybe one meal a day, but would snack on like fruit and nuts and things. And
so were you cooking the meals yourself?
yeah, we had noodles and veg. Like we just bought a load of raw veg and that. We did get a Just Eat on one day. They got a burrito delivered out in the middle of nowhere, which was fun.
You need civilized food sometimes. Yeah,
let's do that. But yeah, it was great, man. It just really helped me integrate again and pull this energy that I'd been stuck in, with where I was at. I was having so many self-reflections on the things that I've done wrong, or how I'm battling myself, or I should be better at this, or just really negative. I don't have no problem with negativity, but in the sense that I wasn't getting out of it. And you can still be a good person and function like people who hide the depression or sadness, or they don't acknowledge it, and they're like out and being happy and everything, but inside you're like, something's not right. And you got to acknowledge that if you talk to somebody about it, but if not, go and figure out and work what has to be done with it, because you can stay stuck in there forever if you want, and you can have the story behind it and the narrative behind it and keep feeding that, or you can act upon it, and just go, right, let's go and handle this, let's see what's going on. And for me, it was really, I just needed to get back into the things that raised my energy, and a lot of that was the sincerity of the meditation, of the mantra, and of the breath work. And doing it again, like it came back to me very strongly yesterday, like my energy through the roof. Again, no dependence on external stimulus, no need for anything to pick me up. By transforming that energy, which was mainly through my prana, through the breath work, through the Isha Foundation's Shambhavi Mudra, which I found phenomenal. It was phenomenal when I learned it in 2016, and it was part of my daily practice, but it kind of winded, and you get thrown off like doing my Kundalini yoga teacher training, trying different ones, and as we were talking about all these books and other teachers, it's so easy to get separated from what works for you, because there's something new to try, where's that to try. And the good thing with when you find your steady practice, whether it's silent meditation, breathwork, whatever it is, if it's energizing you or it's clearing prana or clearing emotions or mind, that's the foundation. And sometimes that simplicity with sincerity is all you need, and finding the natural motivation comes with it. So we were doing it every day, and I got back on Sunday, and we're only on Thursday now, but my alarm's set for 7 a.m. in the morning, and then I have one for 7:15, because I use that time to recollect my dreams before I write my dreams down and store them in my head. I write them down, and then get up, get out of bed, and do these practices. And the practices themselves have took me about an hour 15 in the morning. But even combating my own laziness to get up and do it, it's just get up, get into the format of it without the battle of the mind, and as soon as I've done them, the energy's up, and then the whole day's running smoother. Things, like those little chores you have to do that might take you 15 minutes, half an hour, and you can't be bothered, that has gone. It's like, get this done, get that done, bang, 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 because the energy's raised and filtered, and it was not even something that necessarily had to be spoke about. It was cleansing, it was clearing, it was raising. And it's amazing how simple that can be. But with that needs a commitment to stay with it. So I'm doing it twice a day. The minimum practice will be the Sadhguru's app. If you follow the all of them on there, very simple ones. Start with the Namaskar in the morning, doing a few simple movements, alternate nostril breathing, 7 times each. And then I'll go into the Kriya. So a bit of leg movement, cat-cow, things like that, and then different styles of breathwork and mantra on top. And yeah, it's like, it was that simple. Just get back into it with some heart. So I'll do that in the morning, and I'll just do the Kriya again in the evening.
Right, because that before you go to bed?
Depends how the time works. It's good, I can do it before bed, but in this practice of being lenient on myself, it's not like it has to be done at this specific time. Right. It's like, just get it done in the morning. First thing, because I've got the time. It's like, if my first client now with lockdown, I've not had any 6 a.m. clients or anything, they've been 9 o'clock. So there's no reason for me to not be getting up at 7 and having that time to do my stuff, and then having another 40 minutes just to, have my shower, chill and get ready. It's like, these simple things that I'd got so lazy or sluggish or forgot how effective they are, going to bed at a certain time and waking up at a certain time, having commitment of a practice, but the commitment without the tension of having to do it, which is something I can be prone to. Yeah, it's been transformational again. Simple. And doing it before bed or in the evening just to cleanse from the day. Like, great, sleep's going really well, and yeah, just feeling so good about it. And I think having that commitment to something that uplifts you, whatever it is, but in conjunction with life, because it's providing nothing but benefits, you know. And seeing where I would hold myself back, either through idleness or laziness, like, well, there's laziness. Do I want that quality within me? No. So just get up and do the thing, or just have the cold shower, or whatever, looking at all these formats of resistance that I would then create the narratives behind why I can justify not doing it.
Right.
You know, and it's like that is always in humanity. That's always within us if we get stale enough. And the other aspect really is, I was having a good conversation with one of my clients today, and we were talking about how when you get up and going, he's a similar mindset. Like he's very achieving towards business and how he sees his life. When he gets going, absolutely smashing it. And this is when the foot comes off the pedal, because you're like, right, I'm there now. And before you know it, without whatever the foundational base level of your commitment is, if that's not kept in place, you start to drop. And I liken it to like a bird. You know, a bird's taking off and it's flying, it's got its wings going, and then it can just glide, and it's gliding. And then if it stops flapping its wings at some point, it's going to glide down, right, you know, before it realizes. And it's like, yes, when you're up and running, maybe you can lean off the practices if you choose to, but what is the minimum you need to keep flapping the wings every now and again, you know? And it's keeping that fire burning. For me, it'll always be these 2 times now. Again, I've done the dance enough times, in and out, what's working, what's not working, tried many different routines, and I know what's there, and the simplicity of it, which also comes down to narrowing down something that I've been working on since the November, which I spoke about, as well as reading so many sources of information, books and courses, which are great, but how many pulls am I having? You know, how much information is required? Like, still always learn, but not at the price of what's keeping you afloat and what's keeping you balanced and what's actually necessary for your life. Like, learn about other things, but there's so many good talks. There's another Sadhguru one about just have that one focus for what your main drive is for your life. And for me, it's realization, it's self-realization, it's working towards removing the ego and filling and becoming empty from that sense, to be in service of life. I don't think there's anything in my world greater than being in service of life, which requires the drop of ego, but you also need energy and awareness to do that. So the foundational practice to create that, purify in the morning, purify in the evening, have fun and play around in the day, by all means, you know, whatever that works, you know, the trials of life. But you've got these practices in place every day to keep that foundation strong. And for that, again, it's cutting out sources that will lead to distraction. So yeah, man, that's kind of where I'm at with it, and I just feel incredible again from the simple means. The narrative in my mind, you know, any self-defeating talk or limitations or criticisms that are going out to the other world, and being able to accept things, and it's wonderful. You know, we're talking, me and Maurice had some good conversations about mask or no mask, or governments, the big conspiracy, or following the government, and it's like all of this is the play of life. And when we're picking a side, we're Sadhgurus don't make the conclusions, we're closing the other opinion off, and it's like, no, it should be this way. Even in reflection of when we were discussing the protest, is it for, is it against? Perhaps there's always the middle ground, and perhaps there's always the reasons. Like, how do we always know? Other than having the conversation, but without being hell-bent on being correct. Just being open and understanding the coin has 2 sides. If you want all of life, you have to have 2 sides, and to find freedom within that, you know, not rigidity. So it's been great. It's been a great process, and yeah, man, it's just been committed simplistically, those 2 practices.
Amazing. So there's a couple of things I want to go into there, but I think this whole thing that you mentioned does tie into the topic that we want to talk about today, which is loosely about the pitfalls of self-help and also contentment. So the 2 sides. And I think what you mentioned there about the books, and just, you know, we can get into the mentality of digesting or devouring information continuously after finishing one and going on to the next, because we feel that is it's given us a dopamine release. When you finish a book and you've gone through a self-help book, it makes you feel all motivated. And then as soon as there's a dopamine decrease, you automatically try and replace that with something else instead of actually taking the action towards solving the issue. So we end up falling into that trap. And there's an industry that obviously exists out there that kind of it's worth 13.8 billion a year. All the self-help stuff that you watch, all the motivational stuff you watch, there's a big industry out there, and they make a lot of money based on people buying into courses, books, seminars, etc., workshops, based on this one insecurity where a person can't let go of the sort of the feeling of feeling motivated or the dopamine release they get. So we can talk about that in a brief second, but in regards to what you were going through, it's very interesting. I had my own similar parallels in regards to my meditation practice. I felt like as time has gone on, if I look at the start of lockdown, my meditation time has gone from maybe 15-20 minutes a day, and it's bumped up about 15-20 minutes a session, and it's bumped up to about half an hour, 40 minutes. So right now my average time is probably about 35 minutes to 40 minutes per sitting. And I do it twice a day, so once in the morning when I wake up, and now I've suddenly become a morning person. Just saying to my friend Jade this morning, a shout out to Jade.
Big shout out to Jade.
She's been asking for a while to give her a shout out, so I'm going to embarrass her and give her a
Jade's great. A lot of love for Jade.
And she was saying, what's going on? Like, you're up early this morning. I'm like, yeah, like it's because of class as well, teaching class early in the morning, but it's the fact that there's just some sort of feeling of peacefulness and calmness in before the sun rises, and it's a perfect environment to meditate. This is why they say, waking up 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning to meditate is a great idea. And yeah, so I felt like I was trying to strive for too much now. So I've done 40 minutes, but I want to try and bump it up to an hour. And it's not because of quantity. I'm not trying to achieve quantity. It's because when I have these meditation days, and it's more days now than it used to be, but I really get deep into the meditative practice. And I go quite deep, and then I suddenly realize I'm pulled back out of it. And then it takes a while for me to get back into it again, maybe another 5 or 6 minutes to get back into it. And then again, I'm in there for a bit. And as soon as I realize I'm in that state, I'm pulled back out again. And reading about this sort of process, this is how it is, until you've developed a firm grasp of how to remain in that environment, it'll pull you in and out. And again, like we said in the previous podcast, this might just be the gateway. I'm not even entered through the gateway yet. This is just getting to the gateway. But yeah, I feel like I was chasing a bit too much, and I wanted to reading, like for example, we just talked about autobiography of a yogi. Going back into the book and reading more about the experiences of Swami Yogananda and other people from other books, like listening to the ISKCON guys talk about the Bhagavad Gita and their meditative practice and stuff. I really wanted to experience that, and I felt like everything I'm doing right now in life, all the sacrifices I'm making, they don't feel like sacrifices, but if you look at what's been happening, so for example, I don't know if I mentioned this to you last time, but I don't use shampoo in my hair anymore. And it's just become a very natural process. I haven't done anything forceful to go, today I'm just going to wake up and not use shampoo. It's just happened over the course of time. So what I've done now is, instead of going with the intention of, I need to do this, I've gone in with the intention of, whatever I'm going through right now, it will happen naturally. Plus, if I look at where I was 6 months ago, when I went into the lockdown process, being a bit more anxious about how things were going to become, or how things were going to go, during the lockdown and after the lockdown, I'm definitely way more settled. Plus, I'm trying to take that intention into my meditative practice. So it's like, whatever I'm experiencing right now is exactly where I need to be. And I just need to not get too caught up with the quantity of trying to get, to a certain stage, get into an hour mark, or maybe pushing up to an hour and 15, an hour and a half. Just enjoy what's going on right now and ride with the wave. And the more I'm doing that right now, the more it's just getting some really crazy dreams, and things are just kind of happening. But yeah, it's always it's that chattering monkey, or that materialistic mindset of just, I want more now. You know what I mean? And to try and shut that off, it becomes a very interesting process. And also, I want to talk about when you mentioned about the analogy of the bird flapping his wings. You have to also flap your wings. Once you get to that stage where you're gliding, you also have to flap your wings a couple of times to stay afloat. But at the same time, you can also flap your wings a bit too much and end up the story of Icarus, where he burns himself in the sun because he learns to fly, which is what he always wanted to do. It gets too high, instead of staying in the area where it is the free zone of the area that's the safe zone, he ends up flapping his wings a little too much in the fear that he'll lose it. In the fear that he will lose his flight, he goes too close to the sun and he's burnt alive. So this kind of idea, it's always been in the back of my mind. Am I trying to flap a little too much sometimes? So it's getting to that level where you're flapping and you're not flapping for any sort of instant gratification or any sort of idea of getting to a particular destination, but you're just gliding through the air. So that's the kind of intent I'm going with my practice.
Yeah, very healthy, man. Really good way to do it. It's seeing that when the right time to flap is, right? For me, it wasn't noticing that I wasn't flapping. I was just gliding and then coasting. Before I know it, I'm like coming down. I'm like, why am I feeling like this?
It's interesting how we've gone through the two extremes almost.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is what it is, life, isn't it? We're going through these polarities. The pendulum's always going one way to the other until we either step out of the pendulum or we find that the balancing point of it, and we're not pulled either way. And I think this is everybody's evolutionary process. Generally, in one way or the other, we're figuring these things out, and the conversation we were having before we started is you learn by going into it, by doing it. The planning and the trying to understand it logically is a very small part of the actual process. It's seeing, and the reason we have these habits again and again, this is what self-knowledge is. Like, how many years have I been going real hell for leather in something, and then having to come right out and just becoming an absolute stoner or a waster and not doing anything with my energy, and then time to get back on it. I'm cracking a whip on myself almost to the aesthetics point, leaving my arm in the air for 20 years or causing myself pain, to really drive and get somewhere. And it's like, these are my psychological functions. I have to be very wary of those two states, and seeing that I have to, that I want to relax it and be in that middle point, and knowing when to flap and when not. And I think, again, the minimal foundational levels, knowing what they are for oneself is a great and a sturdy way to do it. Like, I'll know if I'm going to get up at 7 to 7:15, the Monday was a bit like, I'm going to get up and do this. Got up and did it. Tuesday, Wednesday, I was like, it's time to meditate. Looking forward to it and waking up spontaneously for it as well, setting the natural alarm within. Because these are, we all know so well, it's not having the big massive experiences that define who you are. It's what we're doing daily, the daily habits, the daily talk, the daily energy that we've got that will show us what our life is. And to commit that hour and a half in the morning to my spiritual practice, to my meditation, to my kriyas and my breath work, all that is going to do is give me a much better life and a much better sense of energy. There's nothing mental or logical about it in the sense. It's just do the practice, get the feel, and the purification from that side happens. I can feel like the heaviness within me going, because you're committing to something and you're doing an action that is purifying, and it's of benefit to the body and to the mind. And that alone, it's like, drink water every day, you're going to be fine. Or you could drink a litre of Coca-Cola, or you could drink nothing. Because you can get 4 days without water, 8 days without water?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So you could do that if you choose, but your body will be dehydrated, you'll be cranky and tired. It's like, what actions would one be willing to commit to that will bring something for the direction of their life? And for me, the main principle of my life is having that spiritual connection and understanding and becoming selfless for the overall goal. It's not going to happen just from nothing, and to have that commitment without the intensity is something that I really want to work towards, and it is that. Do it in the morning, do it in the evening. If I get more in the day, because I'm doing my Kundalini yoga kriyas, in my lunchtime or when the time comes, but if I don't get to it, there's no pressure on myself anymore, because all I need is those two things: the morning practice, evening practice, an hour each way. Fine.
Yeah, it takes a certain amount of maturity to get to that stage. To a stage where you decide that I'm not going to go after this sort of spiritual pursuit in the way I would do with a materialistic pursuit, which is the way, we get taught in the West, which is go at it hard, which is, again, ties in with the self-help culture, which is go at it hard, and regardless of how you get to that goal, just try and strive as much as possible. And you watch any of the motivational people like Tony Robinson, Goggins. What was his first name?
David
Goggins. And I think just mentioning it, I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I mentioned it to my friend today when I was talking to him that I watched a small little clip of Joe Rogan talking to, I forgot his name now, the other podcaster that does it. He's an engineer that used to work for Tesla. Forgot his name, but they were just talking about Goggins and how this guy said, I don't listen to Goggins anymore. And Joe was like, how come? And he said, it's because this idea or this expectation of going hard at everything you do, going hard at it and going with that intensity, it's just going to end up causing problems eventually. Like maybe not the first couple of times, but eventually it's going to cause you issues. Maybe in your relationships, maybe in your family life, maybe in your work life. It's going to cause problems because it takes a certain character to go with that sort of mindset. And Joe Rogan described it best. He says Goggins sounds like not a person who's doing it as an artist, the pursuit of art. He's doing it as a person who's in the pursuit of conquest, as a conqueror. And having that mindset of I'm going to get this done regardless of what happens, even if it kills me, is not a healthy process to go through if you are trying to achieve a lifestyle where, of contentment, which is the opposite way of doing things, which is being relaxed with how things are. And I think we mentioned it in a previous podcast, the difference between being goal-oriented and being process-oriented. It's the fact that you set these targets in mind, but you don't almost burn everything alive. Like you don't set the entire forest alight just because you're trying to escape the forest. You might be lost in the forest and you're trying to escape the forest, but the answer isn't to burn the rest of the forest just to get out. The way to do it is to find the path, decide whether that's the route you're going to take, and then if you need to switch that and divert into a different path, then do it. Do it without any clinging or attachment towards the previous path. But as soon as you decide you're going to go with the mentality that you're going to burn everything ahead of you or behind you, all you're going to do is you're going to hit a wall straight away. And I think that mindset is what most of us are doing in the Western world, which is chasing materialistic objects or materialistic things like success, fame, money, etc., with the mindset of I need to get there regardless of what. And I think again it's a quote by Sadhguru that really, and I think it was from in engineering, that really did strike a chord with me. He goes, the sort of having cars and having houses and having the success that most people have and considering that as joy is not actually joy when you realize that success is only there out of someone else not being able to achieve it, out of comparison. So let's say if I have a flashy car, a flashy house, if I feel good about that, and I'm doing it because I feel like I've got this now, all you're really doing is you're comparing it to other people that haven't got it. So could you actually call that joy? The joy that comes out from someone else's deprivation or someone else's misery, is that called joy? And that is the kind of culture we're living in today, which is stepping on other people to get on top. And you have to sacrifice a lot internally as a person to get where you are, and there is a lot of respect out of that you sacrifice so many things for yourself. For example, like we said in previous podcasts, you might be a good looking person and you sacrifice that to get to a high purpose. You might be successful in terms of you have a lot of money and you sacrifice that to do something else with higher purpose and give selflessly. That internal sacrifice is a great achievement to have because it brings about humility. The other sacrifice, which is stepping on people's sort of toes of other people's sort of achievements and stuff to get where you are, that is not the sacrifice we want. That's not the sacrifice the Eastern approach or the spiritual process brings about. If you're truly mindful, you would not be stepping on other people's heads just to get somewhere in terms of elevation. So that's something we have to be very mindful of. And going back to our approach to certain things, for example, spirituality and our pursuit for liberation or self-realization or whatever you want to call it, again, are we stepping on other people's heads through our desire to get where we want to get to? So this is something that we have to think about, and it's something that I think I mentioned to a few of my friends who are obviously who are Indian and Hindus as well. Like, are you doing this because you are doing it generally out of the intention of getting somewhere through the process of growth, or are you doing it because you want to show other people that you are growing as a person?
I think that stepping on people's head as well doesn't just have to be seen as the physical, get out of the way, and cutthroat in businesses. And I know some real severe cases of that, and people will purposely push other people away or in a direction to make them look better, and it's like, whoa, I've seen it, and it's ugly, it's real heavy stuff that we're willing to do that for our own aspirations. And for what? Like, because that's all material based or status based. But stepping on people's heads, like in an emotional sense, or what we're saying in our mind about other people, like, oh, I'm better than that person because da-da-da. Like, we're still doing it in those elements. And it's like, I'm feeling that in here, I'm aware of that in here, let's quash that. And having a spiritual understanding and seeing that everybody, life is all of it. Life is all inclusive to everything, to you, to individual people having their own life and expression, but you can't be away from that person or that thing or that energy or the way that person thinks or whatnot. It can be like, oh, I hate that side, or the Reds hate the Blues or whatever, but it's like, well, you don't. You actually enjoy that you have that rivalry and you enjoy that you have that.
100%, yeah.
Maybe that you like to go and beat the hell out of each other like the football gangs used to do. Like, that was something they wanted to do, hence why they did it. Wars. Well, I'm going to go and kill you because I want the world to be this way. And I'm not willing to reach an agreement, or I don't accept those terms, more on the aggressor's perspective. Or the oppressing, who have to be fought against in that stance because then they're trying to take over the world. And it's interesting that way when you look at sort of Buddhist temples. I remember reading something. It was a Facebook argument actually. This guy had said to me a few years back. It was when all the early Brexit stuff was happening, and he said to me about Buddhism. Have you seen this about Buddhists and Muslims, and that the Buddhists were killing some Muslims, and it was there's more to it, but it was about they were burning the Buddhist temples, and an extreme sect of Muslims, and then these extreme sect of Buddhism was fighting back. And it's like, what an interesting concept. You got these philosophies or religions that are based on peace and love and compassion and acceptance, yet there's war going on to save and protect their own ideals, which you look at the Bhagavad Gita at times is required, like that fighting and that war and what you have to do there and then. It can be very much required, but who's doing it? Where's it coming from? Is it coming from the ego that goes, right, I'm going to do the whole world over and this people and that group because I want to get somewhere? Or is it like, well, this person has to be stopped, and that's the only way that it's going to occur, and otherwise the whole world's going to burn? Really fascinating. And again, that's broadening the approach to allow that in, and coming from the sense of right action, which can be something that's seen as negative. You speak very well, better than I do, about that way of living, but it's right, and you can still have sadness and anger and upset, but accept what's going on. You still have those emotions and just trying to navigate through it and go, well, that hurts, but this has to be done. I don't know if that's been said clear enough there. Maybe you can clean that up for me a bit.
No, I think it's completely right. And the Gita talks about war, and like we said previously in the podcast that we did about the Gita, a lot of people that come into the Eastern approach and then they're told about the Gita and then they read the Gita, automatically the first assumption is, why is this happening just before a war? Why is it a war? Like, if Krishna is the incarnation of God, why is he telling Arjuna to fight in this war? And it's understanding that there are certain principles that you are supposed to fight for, and most times war or physicality is the last option. When you've exhausted the other options and you know that there is no other way to do this, then war comes into the sort of place. Just like when we on a playground, and I guess it's a pretty crappy analogy, but like most kids will get into a fight as the first sort of result. But let's say if kids were a bit more mature and you talk about things and everything, you still, regardless of how you tell someone that maybe this approach isn't right, maybe you need to try and chill out and go with this approach, and they're not willing to listen, and you have no option and you have to fight them. I think that sort of idea. And Krishna says to Arjuna, there are only certain scenarios that you're supposed to fight physically, and one of them is when dharma, so the duty and the eternal sort of law, is being threatened. And it was being threatened by the opposition, Duryodhan, which was Arjuna's cousin. So when that happens, then it has to be that. It has to come down to war. But it's exactly what you said, which is you don't have the war in the intention that I'm going to elevate myself out of this whole war. If I win this battle, then I get the kingdom, I get everything I want, I get all the riches. It can't come out of selfish action. It has to come out of selfless action, which is I'm giving myself to this war so then people in the future can live in peaceful times with democracy and spirituality marrying, politics and stuff. And I think that's what separates the two sort of philosophies. And again, remember, the Gita is based not only just on a external war, but an internal war. So Kurukshetra is the actual field, the mind that you have your war going on in. So you're battling yourself every single day, and you're asking yourself, should I continue fighting, or should I step away and not participate in this mental battle? So the only war we should be looking at individually, and we should be encouraging, is the war against the mind. How your mind is telling you, no, you don't need to go to the gym, or you don't need to get healthy, you're fine exactly where you are. So that is the constant battle that you need to fight. And funny enough, Yogananda's second book, so not the autobiography, but he talks about the psychology of the Gita, and I think it's called Arjun's Conversation with Krishna or something, and it just talks about the psychology of the war. Another beautiful book, and he talks about how he breaks it down into the psychology aspect, so what the war represents, what Arjun represents as the sort of people like us, the mortals that are kind of always fighting this battle, always lost. Krishna is the inner voice that's coming out and saying, this is the right action, you just need to silence the mind, so then the inner voice comes out. Silence the mind in the sense that whatever noise that's going in the mind, quieten it down. Not silence in the sense that I'm just going to stop thinking, but quieten the voices and the noise that's going on, and then allow the inner voice to come out and express itself. And it's just beautifully spoken about, and I think that's the correct approach to tackling these issues, which again ties in with the second part, which is contentment. One of the reasons why self-help never talks about contentment is because you can't sell contentment. How can you sell someone to not buy your book or buy your course? No, it's fine. Like this book you bought, just be happy with that. You're happy with exactly where you are. You can't sell that, because then automatically people think that when you're content in life, you're no longer striving. So there's this approach in the West that contentment means you're no longer striving in life. No, it's actually the opposite. You are still striving, but you're striving for selfless purposes. So you're doing it to help other people out. And by helping other people out, that's the only form of joy that you will ever get in this life. The other one is being desireless, which again ties in with this. By helping other people out and doing it purely for the action of serving other people, you create contentment and you create internal joy and happiness, because it's no longer all about I or me. It's about you and we, and helping the greater good and helping other individuals out who are struggling with their situation. So I think that is the other point to add to this. So
I think there's a good example with that as well, for the tricks we can do in our mind that we think we're doing that. If there's a fire and somebody's in there burning, you can go, I'm going to be a hero, I'm going to go in there and save that person. You've got no training or experience, I'm going to go in and save that person. Or somebody could go, I'm going to try and help that person without the need of being a hero. It's like, I want to save this, I want to do that. This person go, there's somebody in there. It'll be like, There's a difference there, isn't there, without wanting to be seen or achieving that thing, or just doing the thing that's right to be done. And the mind will like to trick us even on that spiritual path, which is Alan Watts's talk so much more, and I'm more holy than this person, I'm more spiritual, or I'm calmer, or I accept my issues better than you accept yours, and on and on, and this is it.
It's the comparison, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, where is it coming from, and why are we comparing? Like, can we just do these things where it isn't coming from the chatter of the mind? Can we be naturally selfless? And I think this part of the path comes when you've done these cycles enough times and you've seen it. I'm just getting in another trap, or I'm on that pendulum, then I'm on that, and then it's coming something else and it's disguised as something new, but it's still the same thing over again. And for me, when having that realization, I just want to, there was a point at a peak where it's like, I just want a selfless life. Like, don't want to be Craig anymore, in the sense of I'm quite fulfilled. I don't really have the aspirations to be the world's greatest breathwork teacher, or teach around the globe or teach all of the UK. There's nothing, I just enjoy doing it. And I love it and I know it and I like to share it out and people have a great response to it and it helps them. I'll do that. As opposed to there's nothing wrong with the aspirations, because these are desires at the end of the day, aren't they? People can say often, you've not got enough aspirations. And it's something I've heard before, actually, is, you could do more, or you could speak to more people, or use the online platforms in a different way. And it's like, but I'm not really that asked. Like, And it comes in the guise, what I've experienced from other people is, yeah, but you can help more. You know, if you got online or you had these, you can help more. It's like, do I need to? You know, it's not okay. Because that's where I would go to burnout, trying to be
selfless.
More selfless, trying to be selfless in the sense of, right, I've got to keep giving. And this is where I hit burnout, because it would be like, or the unworthiness aspect comes in, I'm not doing enough. Because, I could be doing that. And maybe I should go and do all that and give all these free sessions or do whatever. And it's like, there is that balance.
It's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
Trying to be selfless is an oxymoron.
Yeah, because there's no self involved. It's like you trying to meditate. You cannot meditate. Yeah. The self has to be out of the way for meditation. That's why we're letting go of thoughts and we're seeing them. As long as the thoughts are there, we're still Craig. I'm still the character. I'm still the name. It's not the stillness. It's not the emptiness. Because the content is being filled, the emptiness is being filled. It's ourselves, we're inherently empty. It's just what we do with the mind and the things that we cling on. We make them the obstacles when we just keep dissolving it, and there is no self. And it's such an enticing aspect to live that way. But to get to that point, it's being able to have you fatigued the desires, something we talk about personally a lot in our own conversations. Have our desires been fatigued? Have we finished with that element of life? Have we done this and have we finished drinking? You know, whatever it is. And it's like, well, they don't appeal once you're fatigued enough, or you've had a realization about, that doesn't actually benefit to my life. And it's no longer, I shouldn't do that and I don't want to do it. It doesn't become that anymore, does it? And that's where the difference is. And when people have those I get it moments, or you said it before, you know, you was talking to a friend and you gave them a bit of information and they were like, the doshas you were saying, and it blew your friend's minds, well, there's different food types that actually affect your body. That information then hitting and that person going is like, right, I'm onto something new here, which will take me down another path. Like, there's something with those moments that lead us into something deeper. But it's being cautious that feeling will drop anyway. And it's like, okay, is this really a part of your path now? Or was it another, that's exciting to add to my repertoire, but I'm not going to do anything with it. Yeah. And that's where we come from, as I'm saying, with the reinstallment of my committing practices. You know, I was doing them for 4 years and they lost a bit of emotion at a time and I stopped. But even when they weren't as sincere, they were still effective. I was still flapping my wings. And then when I sort of fell out of them, and I just started to fall down, and I'd search for it in other ways, which would maybe pick me up and down. But it's like, I know the consistent benefit is there. And sometimes it's taking the self out of the way that doesn't want to get out of bed, or that wants to try something new and find the new psychedelic mushroom or the new form of breathing that's going to elevate me and give me a high, or give me some knowledge that I can share out. Like, that stuff's great when it's not for the self to do something with, when it's in space and go, okay, that helps what my overall goal is, which is to remove aspects of self, but still being able to play and have fun, because you can do that even more when your limits of the ego and personality or of who you are is out the way. It's great.
So I want to touch on that point there. So that all comes about because you're externalizing everything. If you're requiring an external source to fuel this idea that you feel fulfilled or you feel selfless, then you hit a pitfall straight away. Because selfless service comes from the internal. It comes from the act itself. And if we tie this in with the psychedelics, if you're always, let's say you were always using mushrooms or you're always smoking weed, then what you're going to do is, to seek a high experience, you're going to use something a little deeper, something a little stronger. And that ends up just causing you more grief than anything else, because you're going back into that trap. And it's very interesting to kind of self-reflect on this idea that, am I going back into that trap again, regardless of what I'm doing? Am I going back into that trap when I'm giving selflessly? Is it actual selfless intention? Or is it there's a small amount of gratification? And obviously for a Western audience, some people might ask, like, what's the issue you taking a bit of gratification away from that? You know, there's no problem with that. There isn't, but if you're looking for a path which is based on pure selflessness and doing things purely for the act of doing things, then you know straight away that deep down inside, it becomes more of it doesn't become a massive burden, but it grows into a burden. It can easily manifest itself into something greater if you don't address it straight away. So this is why it was the analogy that we mentioned in the last podcast. Like, if you have meditation and you use meditation to clear the noise from your head, you also need to plant things in its place. You can't just leave the garden bed clear with just soil, because weeds will start growing out again. And again, like we said about this thing, those tiny little things that are triggered, that are questioning whether you're doing it selflessly or not, you might just think, I'll just leave it here and there. Why not just take a bit of gratification? But then eventually that could grow into a larger weed. So it's trimming it and then growing more things on top of it that are positive for you. So growing positive plants instead of having the weeds grow. So yeah, it's the act of selfless service and the act of contentment. I think they work hand in hand. If you are quite content, then you are more prone to give selflessly. So how do you think you approach contentment, and how do you think you give that to more of a Western audience? How do you teach it? Or how do you even preach it?
Can you? I mean, and this was a really great conversation that me and Reese were having as well about helping people. And you ultimately can't help people. You can have these levels of insight, and your example of speaking about the doshas to somebody before, like, you could say there's help there that's twigged in that person, and it's made somebody go, that's worth looking at. So I would say that's help. What they then do with that, it's out of your hands, because that person could then be in this loop like I've been before, and I'm sure you've been before. We go things over and over again. How many people come and they come to, say, breathwork class, and they're really down and they're really sad, and they needed that blowout of breathwork, and like, oh wow, I feel great again. Great. So you've been essentially helped, or you've helped yourself by going to that thing. What do you then do with your life in that part? Like, do you then continue to help yourself, or do you let those things build back up, do nothing, and then have another session in a month, 2 months time to have a clear out and do it again and again and again, with the massive upsurgence of depression or mental health issues. Some people say it's chemistry based, some people say it's life based and narrative based, or because of their experience. I think we have to look at what are we doing with our life, to what seeds are we planting on a regular basis, like what is it what feeling are we picking up, what are we building, and do we just go to these fixes when we've hit a certain point, feel good, and then allow ourselves to sink back down? When do we flap the wings again? Because I think that's something that we're taught to live by. Well, we've got entertainment all the time, and I know if I just get through work today and I'll have that glass of wine and I'll watch that TV show, and then I'll have another crappy day tomorrow, but I'll do those things over and over again. And it's like, it's a feasible option if somebody wants it, and you can coast that way forever, but that life that's within you can do so much more. We have to be willing to do it ourselves. Like, that retreat away, having good conversations with yourself, or the week with Reese, it was like I needed it. Like, for where I was, we do all have the ability inside, but I needed to be with somebody or out in that space to go, come on, what am I doing with myself? Like, I've put myself here. However my narrative and my thoughts are, my energy is, I've allowed it in one way or the other, either through ignorance or through conscious choice, like whatever it is. We go into new experience, and it's not being harsh towards myself in those frames, like with Corona going on, or with navigating how we live in this new lifestyle and whatnot. Yeah, I think we're going to drop plates, we're going to trip up. That's the point of life. I think we'll talk about that Eastern and Western, the swimming example we were saying with each other earlier. Is like, you have to get in it and figure out how to do it. As long as you've got a lifeline and somebody can go, this person's drowning in the pool, I'll help you. Right, get back in, try again. They're swimming, okay, keep going, right, I'll help you out again. And you learn through it, because it's not going to be perfect and smooth. It's having the highs and the lows, but knowing what you're doing for yourself. Where is it that you're coming from? Where is our disgruntles with life? Where is the problems in our head coming from? Is it just because we're looking at the right? Are we always looking at the floor rather than looking at the stars? Like, even there, the two options. And I think there's a massive cut away from the lifestyle that we have. We've created a trap in the society, in how we live, in the infrastructure of the city. And when you go out and you get to nature and you do look at the stars, and you just like, you can't help but think, what is going on with life? How much more is out there that we know nothing about? And coming back to those conclusions that we draw, this is how life is, and this is how I am, and this is my personality. It's like, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. And that's, I think, the very refreshing and lovely part of working towards selflessness and catching myself when the ego, the mind's running, and go, it's not helping me and my overall goal. What does? The practices, my meditation, my breathing, and allowing yourself to trip up and fall within it, but ultimately knowing that's the direction I'm heading in. So I'm just going to apply things that go that way. And through that, you need strength. You need to be able to say yes to certain things, and you need to be able to say no to certain things, and everything in between. And yeah, it's moving towards it in a way that works for us. And when we're getting multiple streams of stimulus from other people, or from the information, or videos, or teachers, it's just a mess. It just becomes an absolute tangle.
I think it also comes back to expectations. So your expectations as a person that's in the hole, and the expectations set by the person that's trying to pull you out of the hole. Now, if the person is trying to pull you out of the hole and thinking, I'm doing it out of a very selfless reason and I just want to help this person out, again, you have to ask the question, is it out of selfless intention? Are you pulling it out because you want this person to pull out and you want to get some sort of gratification that you've managed to help this person out? And even if it isn't to that extreme, maybe it's just very subtle that I just want to help this person out because I don't want him or her to suffer. Again, does that person want to come out? You ever watch the movie Never Ending Story?
Oh, I loved it, man.
So do you remember the moment where the horse Artrex?
You have on the book.
Yeah, so Craig's definitely a fan. So the moment where Artrex the horse is in that plunge, that swamp that's full of mud, and he's just sinking. That's the analogy of depression. The fact that even though Atreu's pulling him, he's not willing to get out. And I know it traumatized a lot of kids. It traumatized me as a kid.
Man. That wolf scared the hell out of me.
That wolf was scary, but that scene where the horse is just getting pulled deeper into the mud. Now, that is a symbology of depression. It's the fact that some people will purge themselves deeper into depression because of the feeling of how it feels to be in depression. And almost it causes more of a hindrance for the person trying to pull it out. If the person doesn't want to be pulled out, if the person wants to be stuck in that rut, just wants people to feel sorry for that individual, then it can be a very negative downward spiral. And Artrex in that situation just didn't want to come out of the mud. He wasn't doing anything to help himself out.
Remember, he wasn't even moving. He's just like, just being a horse, and he's like sinking. And
Atreyu was trying to convince him, look, you don't have to do this.
Crying and trying to get the pull on the head.
And that is it's a very difficult situation to be in when it's a person that's a loved one that's suffering this. You want to pull the individual out, but if the individual doesn't want to come out, you can't do anything about it. And it's your ability or your sort of courage to let go of that attachment and say, you know what, if the person doesn't want to come out, I can't do anything about it. I literally can't do anything about it. Until the person has got the actual desire or the instinct inside of them or the spark inside of them to get themselves out of that situation, nothing you'll do will help them out. So like we mentioned before the podcast, the analogy of, instead of, let's say if you're wanting to learn to climb or wanting to learn to swim, sometimes the best thing you can do, and I know it's quite cliche to say this, but hear us out when we're saying this, but the best thing you can do is throw yourself into the deep end straight away. And obviously have someone around that knows what they're doing so they can observe you and make sure that you are safe, but throw yourself in the deep end. Then ask the questions. Don't ask the questions first, because when you go in there with the intention of asking questions first, you're going to have 1,000,001 questions. You're going to have an unlimited amount of questions to ask. How do I do this? How do I tread water? What happens if I can't tread water? How do I learn to hold my breath? What happens if I sink straight away? What happens if I do this? There's too many questions that you can't answer in one go. But if you throw yourself in the deep end, then you decide what happens straight after, then you've streamlined those questions. You've got more specific questions like, okay, I've done treading the water in a certain way and I'm not getting anything out of it. What's a more efficient way of treading water? So now you've got the experience, a bit of the experience or the glimpse of how it should feel like or what it can feel like. So you have something to refer to as an experience, as opposed to going in there with a blank analogy. And I think a lot of us today are stuck in the mentality of reading about something like reviews. We've mentioned this previously in the podcast, where you would read a review on the internet, like IMDb, before you go and watch the movie. Before you've even thought about creating your own ideas about the movie, once you've watched it, you've read a review. So you've gone in there with an intention or an outlook of what the movie is going to be about. So if it's a bad movie and someone's rated it good, you're going to go in there with that intention of that, this movie is going to be good. And then again, it comes back to the expectation of, God, that reviewer said this movie is supposed to be good, but it was terrible. And in vice versa as well. So it's going in there without any idea or any intention or expectation, and then having the questions after. Because most times, like my friend Darshan was explaining last night, he's a psychologist who's gone into both Eastern and Western approaches. He said that when he had questions and when he had sort of these sort of deep quarreling questions that he wanted answering, his teacher, when he went to the East, told him that before you even ask me the questions, I want you to follow this basic structure for 6 weeks. Do this, and then come back to me, and then I'll answer your questions. By going through this process, he realized that all the questions he had were already answered by the time he got to the teacher in that 6 week period. So when he came out of it and when he met the teacher, he had more deeper questions to ask. So not about the surface layer or not even the basic questions he was asking. He was asking questions that are far off from the main questions that he had. So yeah, sometimes you find your own answers. Some people find their own, well, I would say most people find their own way out of depression, anxiety, mental health through their own accord, so long as they're willing and they want to get out of it. If they don't want to get out of it, you can't do anything about it. So yeah, that's my 2 cents in the whole situation.
Yeah, it's seeing these things for what they are. Like, there's nothing wrong with being in any state, from depression to on top of the world. It's just, how do you want your life to be lived, and what are you offering from life, from where you are? You don't even have to be offering something, because you're doing something anyway. You know, I think it's in Breath book, James Nestor, he's talking about how the cycle of evolution was occurring, and when you're breathing in oxygen from the trees and you're breathing out carbon dioxide, like, you're already giving something to life. You're helping the trees, your trees are helping it. You're in a symbiotic relationship with everything. So just by being alive, you're doing something great. You know, you're alive because you've been created and you're here. I think the worst case is we just observe and we look around and, you know, try and just enjoy to be alive without doing anything at times, you know, feeling really down. And for me, being stuck in the position where I was in, just feeling like stagnant and stale and pretty shit about myself. And I was like, why am I here? Why am I feeling like this? Knowing it's not the world's fault for the reason that I feel like this. There might be experiences, you know, you might have deaths, you might have breakups, you might have pandemics. But what are you doing with the energy inside, and what is the viewpoint allowed? And this is when we can clear our views from all the noise of the reviews, of the news, of told to feel like this, of this person saying that, and Instagram saying everything should be this way. And we never get in the full picture, because that's not what wants to be said by that. Oh, it might be the right thing what somebody's saying, but that's not your world. It's not reflective of where you are. You are, as Krishnamurti says, the whole of humanity is within you. You're the history of life. And it's right, with the brains that we've got, it's everybody's brain. You know, might be a few differences here and there, or, you know, ailments or what have you, but it's the brain that everybody's got. We're just functioning different because of their personality or conditioning. So wherever we're at, what do you want for it? Like, how can you feel and see in a way that you go, that's all right, I'll take that. And again, nothing's ever right or wrong. It's just what do you want, and how do you find your way? If it's in a depressive state or a down state, how do we find our way out of it? And for me, where I was, it was like, I need to clear my fucking head, man. I need to get out of the city. You know, I've tried the social media thing and it was getting me somewhere. I was seeing something in it that I was being pulled around by others' thoughts and opinions. And again, I thought myself too highly of myself that those things wouldn't affect me, but they were, you know? And even when I deleted the app for that month and finding my thumb just trying to press the button, I didn't want it to do that. Subconsciously embedded, sit down in the chair in this spot with my tea, my thumb's going for it. It wasn't a conscious choice. So these things are embedded subconsciously. And the information that we're taking in, it's happening, man. I've not seen this documentary yet, this Netflix one that people are talking about, the social dilemmas. Is that what it is?
I think it's called that.
You know, I've not seen it yet, but from what I'm told, it's along those lines. Is these things are caused to hook us in, but let alone for that, do we want to be hooked in? Do we still want to be feeling down? Do we still want to be feeling better than others? Whatever it is, what is the life that you want? Do you want those thoughts and feelings? And if they are there, and we're trying to, like, for me, for the letting go process of where I was at, was like, it's all right to feel like that. Don't beat myself up for having these thoughts or these feelings. Like, see them, let them go, and realize that is a part of life. Like, you can't not have it. It's been created from the creator, from life, from the universe. It is there for a reason. It's just seeing, right, I'm done with this now. I'm sick of feeling this way for like 3, 4, 5 weeks. Let's go sort it out. And choosing to do that, which was, for me, headspace, good conversation. But the practice is clearing, cleanse, clean food, meditation, breath work, walks. There's space again.
Yeah, definitely.
Empty.
I think there's 4 ways of learning from a situation or realizing whether you should do it or not. So the first way is listening. So listening to other people talk about it, listening or reading about it, and understanding that, okay, for example, let's use the analogy of alcohol. Alcohol is not good for me, so I listen to other people and they say, this is what they're saying about their experience, so let's not drink it. That's number 1. If that doesn't work, number 2, observation. Watch it for yourself. Yeah, see what the outcome is of drinking too much and see how people feel, see it all happening. You know, my friend who's a doctor will tell you that the amount of patients he gets who are alcoholics, he sees it all, you know. And finally, number 3, the 4th one is more of a sort of letting go, but number 3 is doing it yourself. So if you haven't gone through listening to people and it didn't work for you, you haven't learned it through observing people, now you have to experience it. Yeah, so you experience it yourself and then you realize that, is it serving me? If you are conscious enough, even if you try bringing some sense of consciousness towards your actions or whatever you're doing when you're drinking, or you will realize that, is it serving me? Am I feeling good about it, or am I feeling shit? If you're having more periods of more days or periods of time that you are feeling shit, then maybe you need to reconsider what you're doing. And it's like what we said previously, you will end up just sometimes even burning out from it. Like you'll get sick of it so much that you're exhausted. It's like the sponge. As soon as you drain out the water from the sponge, it's completely dry. You know, it's whether you decide to dip it underneath the tap again that it absorbs and the whole process starts again. So just being a bit more conscious and mindful about that. And the final one, which is the 4th one, if those 3 things don't work and you're still addicted to it, good on you. You know what I mean? Like if you're someone who smokes 65 cigarettes a day and you know by listening to people it wasn't working, by observing people it wasn't working, by going through it and going through all the health problems it wasn't working, and you're completely fine with that, you know, all credits to you.
That's your life then, man.
You do you know, and that's completely fine. I'm not saying get out of it any pessimistic outcome, but again, it goes back to our depression thing. If a person doesn't want to get out of it, doesn't want to listen to people, doesn't observe other people that are in that situation, and then has gone through that experience and doesn't realize that this experience is not good for me, there's nothing you can do. As a family member, as a friend, there's nothing you can do. And I think it's just supporting the person as much as possible, you know, and that's pretty much it. And I think through that process, I think you develop contentment in life, because then you're no longer attached to how other people are also suffering. Because that's the other thing with the careers that we're in. We have to help individuals out, especially you with your breath work. You have to help people out that are going through these little traumas or ordeals. And sometimes it might affect you negatively because of how they're experiencing their situation. But I think you have to kind of transcend that and elevate yourself to a point where you accept those 4 outcomes. You realize that the person, you know, through listening about breathwork, through observing people doing breathwork, or through experiencing breathwork, that this process is going to eventually help them to cleanse those issues that they have. If that doesn't work, then you can't do anything about it. And you have to, and I think a doctor has to do that when they realize that someone's going to die. They have to realize, they have to accept, I've done everything possible to save this person's life. I can't do any more. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the approach, isn't it? It's like I'm fortunate with the breath work and meditation. And I love these tools because I love what they did for me. They helped it. Those tools helped me, you know, and the people who's taught me them along the way, they weren't necessarily trying to help me. They love those things as well. And I think I do like that approach. And, you know, how do we feel about saying it? We're not doing these things to help people. We're doing them because we love the things. It just so happens that those things that we love to do are of benefit to everyone. Because then again, we're removing the ego, or for me, it was that massive aspect that goes, I need to save the world. I need to help everyone as much as I can. And is that a story? You know, is that just another narrative that's coming from how I was brought up and raised and thought I didn't get help and I don't want people to go through that? And you know, there is something lovely and nice about that. But again,
altruistic
that
about it, isn't it?
you know, the road to hell paved with good intentions. So ultimately, it's like that, because that could cause a lot of misery. It's like, you know, I remember in Heroes. Did you ever watch Heroes?
Yeah, of course.
Peter Petrelli. What's the time? I love that stuff. Got everything on.
You get
today.
everything based on your movies and the culture that you've been exposed to.
Yeah, man. Peter Petrelli was in the second series when he'd lost his powers.
Yeah.
But he was he'd just become, he was in the ambulance service, and he was just doing as much as he can, but working to the bone, to the point where he was like knackered and he needed to sleep, to the point where you might be doing more damage. Like, you can't help people, but you're still like trying to do whatever you're supposed to do, but you're in a bad state, you know, and it's like, that's where you can't help the world, or you're not even helping yourself, running away from something or trying to fill a gap because I've got to go and save and do this. And it's like, I think it takes a lot of, for me it did actually. It's like, look at that. Are you trying to help because there's something a lack in yourself? Like, or do you actually want to help? And I do want to help because it feels good to help other people. They win and you win. Everything benefits. But I don't think that can be like that, I've got to save, I've got to help, because it just becomes detrimental to thinking, why can't I help this person? And I've done that with clients before. It's like, why am I at fault for not getting this person through? And there's always self-responsibility, but again, every human is their own world. So when you know what's worked with you, you deliver your message and try and make it as broad as you can. But maybe even in broadening, you're watering down that specific path that you're on, that somebody who can go that path will then get easier. Unfortunately, breathwork and meditation, we've all got these faculties. It's just nurturing them. So all I'm delivering are techniques. You know, all I'm delivering is the experience I've had or heard from others. But that's it. What the experience does to you is your experience. And it's, it's more of an eased approach to doing what it is that we do with our lives and the reasons why. Like an artist, make a beautiful song. Were they making that song to help you or to make you feel good? Or were they making a song because they had creativity and they wanted to make a badass song? You know, where's it coming from? And which of those elements are we willing to say, that was for ego, and I want to do this to make people feel a certain way? Like, why? Why do you want people to feel a certain way? You know, if you just created for the sake of creating, you might do the same thing anyway, but it might be more beneficial to yourself and to others because there's nothing in there that's going, I'm going to pull out a hand. And this is not to get confused with, I'm not saying don't help people, because yes, help people, definitely help people, because there's always the right ways. But it's, again, is it the ego or is it the self? Where's it coming from?
Yeah. So, tying in with what you just said there, sometimes people will help other people because they don't want to lose. You know, they don't want to always be that person that ends up just losing their battle. So they feel as though they need to, for example, let's go back to the surgeon example. And it's great. Like, again, we're not taking anything away from surgeons. They do wonderful things. I've got good friends who are surgeons, and it's something that I've discussed with a few of them, which is this idea. And they've told me, like, you know, the first person they end up losing, like in terms of it costs them their life or whatever happens, it takes a toll on the person. It takes a toll on the surgeon. It takes a toll on the medical staff that are involved. And then once you get past that, and it must be a very difficult battle to get past that, then they start to have this sense of acceptance. And then things become a bit more easier. And funny enough, when things start to become easier, then they have that confidence to know that, okay, I've done everything possible for this person. If beyond that the person dies, I've done everything, you know. So there's a sense of acceptance, there's a sense of contentment in that situation, to realize that I've done everything possible. So yeah, it's a very interesting scenario to get into, and some people will go in there with the intention that I need to save this person regardless. You know, I have to save them it ends up being for your own reason, for your own sort of well-being, your own mental well-being, knowing that I'm not going to fail at this. And through that process, it becomes a very difficult downward spiral, because eventually, if it comes out to a situation where, you know, God forbid it happens, but you cut a nerve by accident and you end up, you know, killing the person by doing that, then it becomes a harder burden to take on, to know that, you know, you did everything possible, and because of your own complacency, you ended up causing a bigger issue. You end up killing the person. So yeah, it's a difficult life, but you have to draw your own line in the situation. You know, you can't expect other people to say, I'm going to draw the line for you. And sometimes people need to set those boundaries for you, actually. Some people need to step in there and say, I'm going to set a boundary for you so you don't cross that boundary. But then at the end of the day, it's down to you as an individual to say, am I going to cross that boundary? And like we said, in an extreme situation where you're a surgeon, sometimes you might end up forcing yourself to cross that boundary just so you can save this one person's life. And it's a very good sort of metaphor for how life works when you're looking at it from the lens of a surgeon?
I think it's so maybe more of the what's the word? It's like zoomed in on a microscope to get to this point of that thinking like, actually, let's talk about help.
Yeah.
You know, how good is the help that we're doing, or why we think that we should help or we must help? Because it's one of those things like, you know, with the new age, everything was light and love in the spirituality sense. Everything's light and love, and it's all, well, you know, that's a nice method to get through things, but it doesn't really help you when you're in the shit and you're depressed and you're finding things hard. Light and love doesn't help you in that sense. So to look at the aspect of, let's see what we're saying about help, and knowing, you know, where is it that where is the ultimate goal that we're going to get to from it? If it's coming from you doing the thing that you do because you know it so well, you'll be able to help a certain amount of people. I mean, imagine that surgeon, nobody needs surgery. That the person who's on that path of life might need to help in another way. It's like, right, you know, and it's, what was that? Nightcrawlers, the movie I think was Jake Gyllenhaal. Not actually seen the film, but I remember it was about they were looking for disasters to film, like a news reporter,
right?
And I think in it he starts to cause disasters to film it, and it's like we can have that element in us. Not in the sense that we're actually creating them, but we could look for things in other people. Maybe go, you know, like a good example, I suppose, is people who go for plastic surgery and they go, oh, you know, I just wanted to go and I've got a broken nose. I just wanted to get my nose fixed. And then they go, okay, we'll fix that nose, but your eyes could do with a bit of a lift in your jaw. And then you're like, does it? Shit. You know, they didn't know anything about that. But that person, you know, again, it's the bit of a negative reason why they'll be doing that for money values, but that's how they see things. Go, right, well, but that person didn't need that. Or bodybuilding, for an example, is get to a certain state of fitness and you look good and you're strong, and then you know, I'm going to get bigger, I'm going to get stronger, and then I'm going to go on stage. And it's like taking that same attitude into help, you know, looking at that, what are we doing with help? Are we trying to fly too high to the sun, or does that help come naturally or with the right level of effort to what we can stand it out there without our necessity to do it, you know, to do it because it's, dare I say, the right thing to do, because life thrives within it. And, you know, we I mean, why do we do these podcasts? We love to talk. We love the ideas that we talk about. If somebody gets help from it, great. But would it be right for us to say we're doing this to help people? You know, how do we weigh these things out? And it's I feel that you have to have, to use your word before, a level of maturity to look at these topics, because we all want it to be, we're all good people and everything we do is about help. If that's the case, I mean, you start with yourself. Are you eating good food? Are you sleeping well? Do you take care of your body? How much are you helping yourself? Because when you're doing that, I think it naturally imbues around the world around you, and that the need to help it's not coming from a drive, which I've had before, you know, that unworthiness and feeling I need to help everybody because there was a hole within me. But when you start taking care of yourself and you're in a more relaxed state, you help just by being around people, in the sense, you know, your energy or the line of conversation you have. And we're all doing this in one way or the other with everybody. It's a constant interaction, and it's a beautiful and amazing thing, and such a great dance of life. And maybe we don't need the mind in it at all, or the drive to make that massive difference. It can come naturally when we're in a healthy state.
That's a really good point that you just said there. So we're basically helping everyone around us. So just by, giving directions to someone, you're helping someone. So when we talk about helping people, we always try and be quite grandiose about it. I've got to do something big, like the hero's journey. I've got to help that person in the burning building. And I think that stems from having a culture that worships people like superheroes and athletes, you know, and people like that. And this is why we're in the situation we're in right now with the world and mental health, is because, first of all, young men are looking for that sort of guidance where they become heroes, and girls are looking for sort of the guidance of, I don't know, to almost aspire to be men in the same way, or the other path, which is to create a family and stuff, which is looked down on. So we're always looking for role models to aspire to be like, but then our sort of aspirations for the role models that we select are super high. I want to be like Albert Einstein. I want to be like Michael Jordan. I want to be like all these sort of amazing individuals, very small individuals, that did massive things, and it's a level that you don't really need to try and strive for. And again, I'm not saying you shouldn't strive to that level, but be content on, I just want to be a good person, or I want to be a good doctor, or I want to be a good lawyer, an honest lawyer, or something like that, which is not so big in terms of the scale that you are helping people out. You are helping individuals out every single day. It's just whether you're aware of doing that, or whether you are thinking that's just not really helping anyone. I need to do something on a grander scale. And this is where I guess it comes into the sort of pitfall of needing recognition for the help you're giving people. Philanthropy, do you donate because you are wanting to help individuals out, these people, these charities out, or are you donating because then people can see what the numbers are on the check that you've given? So questions like these we should be asking ourselves every day. Is my intention pure? It's like Jordan Peterson's clean up your own room. Every single day you have to clean up your own room. We know that our rooms become messy every single day. So you always have to go back and maintain that. And again, it goes back to everything we said previously about clearing your mind for meditation and then growing seeds, but then also realizing that are those flowers now becoming the weeds that originally, you've already pulled out the things that you thought were weeds, but are those flowers now becoming the weeds? So it's a very interesting debate or sort of battle to have. And the Bhagavad Gita, the psychology aspect of the Bhagavad Gita is this conversation, this discussion amongst yourself or in your mind that you have to, this battle that you have to face. Am I becoming my own worst enemy? The Dark Knight quote, what was it right at the end? You either die as a hero or you live long enough to see yourself becoming a villain. And and this is what it's culminated to. All our intentions, they end up starting off being pure, but then the way we've taken this path, the way we're presenting ourselves to the world, it becomes distorted, and now we have to live up to the expectation of what people want us, just how they see us. And that causes the issues that you've just gone through recently. That causes the issues that I've gone through in terms of the meditation process. I need to get to this stage now because I'm on this path. I've sacrificed this much for where I am. I have to stay on it. So again, having these sort of internal discussions, having these discussions with other people that are on similar paths, it always helps, right? Because I always look at you and I think, damn, like, how can this guy be so grounded? And then and then you obviously you're going through your little thing, and I always look at it and think, if you're going through that, then I'm okay where I am. I don't need to be like comparing again and thinking Craig's got his shit together, I need to make sure I've got my shit together.
Man, it's such a good point. I was talking to a mate yesterday. We had our meditation class that we go to, and he was saying, like, I'm having a lot of tension in my solar plexus and my heart at the minute, and around his heart to his centre of his chest. And he's like, I don't know where it's coming from. Like, I'm doing my meditation and practicing. And I was like, man, we've been meditating together for like 6 years, almost weekly. And he was like, man, I'm glad you said that. And I'm sorry that you're feeling that shit, but it's made me relieved because I'm feeling a lot of anxiety and stress, and it's not something, it's something that like, there'll be a point in my life where I'd be like, I would not accept that. I'd be like, no, I do not have stress. I'm positive and I'm uplifting, and I want to be inspiring. So, and deny it to the sense. And he told me that, and I was like, it put me at ease. I felt something drop because that what you just said then, the comparisons we have to other people.
Even the positive comparisons.
Yeah, even the positive comparisons. Like, again, it's always from ourselves and thinking, well, that person's like that, and I like get inspiration and understand and have the conversation. There's another mate who said, I would sit in a meditation posture and it'd be like an hour or so and I wouldn't move, to the point where I know in my head that hurts, but I'm gonna fucking have this and I will not move. And I would do it so often because that was that stiffness in myself. Again, that desire to be a certain way and also to show a certain image. And one of the lads said to me once, he's like, I always found you really really inspiring. I wanted to be like you in that meditation, and I would feel bad that I can't do it like you do, like how disciplined you are. And I was like, mate, it's not fun. Like, I'm doing it for an image and to try and overcome something. It's a battle. And it was that, maybe, one, to be honest about that was such a relieving thing that somebody else has seen what I'm struggling with and thinking it's a good thing that they want. I'm like, no. And it made me realise, just be more open about things, and when I need to move. It's like, I mean, even that, there are ways that, yes, your body can be a bit of a rascal and you need to get it in position and work through it, but there's a certain time for that, isn't it? It's like, don't do it every single time. And for hearing you say that, and a mate, I caught up with a good friend of mine, Owen, today, And we were having a chat, and he was telling me like something heavy he's been through recently. And I was just sharing my experience, like, man, I've been pretty down the last few weeks. And he was like, and he said the same thing I said to my mate yesterday. He's like, you know what, Craig, I'm sorry for what you've been, but it's really good that you've said that. And the same, like, I think because we detach more from the materialistic way of living and enter more of the spiritual, the spiritual side of living, and want to be that. But it doesn't, you know, we still have all these issues, and maybe more so, you know, when we were out at the farm, and the people around the country, grounded, man. They just say, like, they'll stop, they'll talk to you, and they get about the day. They're not hiding, they're not covering. They just say how things are in such a matter-of-fact way. They're not tangled up in the shit that we're tangled up in. And I think that's the thing with spirituality as well, is you can just get into a wide mess and, I've got to be like that. Or the meditation thing, which I've definitely done. I will sit there and I'll meditate for however long, even when I'm not meditating. What's the point? Well, other than to say I've done it, or I can persevere. And it's like, yeah, we've all got our stuff going on. It's just when we can be honest about it and let it go, like, just that sense of ease that comes from it. And maybe that's what we needed, just oh yeah, I'm human. I'm human, and we're not the Buddha, you know, we're not there yet. We've not let go of enough, because, you know, I do believe that enlightenment state, the void, the emptiness, is there. It's just we've crowded it with thing upon thing, Alan Watts. We've put all the props on the stage, forgetting that the stage is where the show happens. We need to take the props off, and we're only getting there through honesty and through explaining and sharing, because, you know, I could easily have not discussed anything about what I'm in. Yes, I did my retreat and it was perfectly zen and I'm back uplifting. It's like, oh man, I was dealing with some heavy shit because I'd fucked my own mind up through how I was living, you know, and being stuck with the times. And it's like, the honesty and the openness and going into it is what untangles it. We let go of the tension of having to be a certain way or having to achieve a certain amount, gives the freedom to breathe again, and then off you go. We start flapping the wings again, and we go until the next time, because it's going to happen again.
It's going to happen again.
But less frequently and for a shorter period of time. So that's why we welcome the failures and the falls and owning up to our shit and our mistakes, because that's where the growth really happens and the realizations really occur.
So I want to tie that in with a good example. I was reading about Gandhi, and I was saying it to one of my friends about the Gandhi died as a failure. He felt himself he was a failure. So he was on the path of brahmacharya, and he was addicted to, obviously, the company of women at a certain period of time. And he felt like in order to serve the country, he needed to obviously get rid of certain bad habits. And he was so rigid with it at the start that he started, there's books about, if you read his autobiography and stuff, he talks about how he started sleeping next to naked students of his, because he wanted to really drive it out. Like, he wanted to drive the desire out.
Was this in his, sorry to cut you off, in his autobiography? Because I remember reading different things about this, whether he was generating like the energy with these virgins or the naked girls he was sleeping with to take that energy on, or was it?
So from what I was reading, it's something that, you know, I guess if someone's on this path has to go through. I read that he was doing it out of maybe it's two sides of the same coin. He was doing it because he wanted to discipline himself, like really discipline himself. And obviously he's read about brahmacharya. He never started off as a religious man or a spiritual man. He went through this process when he started to realize that actually I want to serve my country in the most peaceful way. So during this time, he was reading the Bhagavad Gita, and he does quote it a few times, and he says that in times when I'm struggling with certain things in my life, I turn to a chapter of the Gita and it gives me immediate sort of relief or answer. So he starts to see exactly what we've just discussed about unloading it on a friend, and the friend goes, oh, I'm so glad you've just said that, because I'm going through the same thing. So he saw that in Arjun's struggle as a warrior when he's unloading on Krishna and saying, look mate, I'm struggling with this. So he said his path to brahmacharya meant that he went down the path of like forcing himself he started cutting things out of his life. So he stopped having sex with his wife, and he had permission from his wife to do this, and he also had permission from his students to do this as well. He slept next to naked women, and again, look, this is what I've read. I don't know if there's people that are quite anal about certain descriptions and details, but he said he slept next to naked women just to destroy the temptation. And he said that was an ongoing battle all the way to the day that he died. It was a very difficult struggle to have. And so he felt like he didn't fully serve his country because he had these desires still. And I was like, wow, like that's a burden. That's a real harsh burden to die with, to know that you died as a failure. And I guess it's a sense of humility as well, to know that you died as a failure. You know, like people say to me, like, you know, you've got to this stage of life and you're doing this, and you know, you don't drink alcohol, you don't eat meat, you don't eat fish, you don't eat out much. You know, you're very restricted about the food you're taking in. So, you know, you're a good aspiration to achieve, and we admire you. But I'm like, I never feel like that. I never ever feel like that. I don't feel like me not drinking alcohol is such a great achievement, or me not eating out is a great achievement. It's just the way I am. Like they said about the hair thing, I can't really control the way my hair looks, and it's just the way it is. So there is no sort of credibility, like internal self-satisfaction or credibility to that. It's just like, it is the way you are, and you're always striving for humility, and that's one thing you should strive in life. And this is what I read Gandhi was doing, and I was like, wow, like if he died as a failure, even Krishna to a certain degree, someone who's the incarnation of God, Ram died as a person that just literally went through suffering after suffering, but managed to smile all the way through that and not let anything didn't take anything personally or say anything bad to anyone out of impulse. And Krishna died as a failure because he wanted to marry the spiritual process with the political process at the time, and he did it to a certain degree, but when he passed and died, then it just went all to hell. So he died as a failure. So it just makes me think that even though we're doing this journey, the whole purpose of this journey is the strive itself. Like, we will get to where we want to get to eventually, but it's the strive itself that is the journey. You know, it's not even the journey itself, it's the actual striving of the journey, always wanting to be, you know, trying to purify yourself, always self-reflecting, trying to purify yourself again, and going through the struggle. And I was just thinking, if a guy like Gandhi was struggling with the brahmachari path, like, how am I going to go through this? And I'm lucky that I don't have certain sort of pitfalls that he was going through, but I have my own pitfalls. So yeah, it's very interesting, and it's nice to kind of talk about this with someone else who's going through his own pitfalls. And I know it sounds probably weird to our viewers to be able to walk away or just say to the person and say, I'm actually glad you're going through this. It sounds insane. Like, why would you say that to someone? But if you look at it with what we're doing, we're self-reflecting all the time. It's nice that you're not alone on this path, that you know, other people are human as well, so you're not feeling bad about being human. So yeah,
well, this is the full circle of the dismantling of social media. Is this?
Yes.
Saying, yeah, those nice, but that's just the good bits. And one, how many of those good bits are actually real and authentic anyway? And maybe like we want to show that, and I don't think that's a bad thing. We want to see how nice the world is and how nice my life is. And that's fine if we were wise enough to know that there's the other side of the coin. Like Alan Watts has these good talk on, like, you've got a tapestry and it's got a really lovely design on the front, but on the other side it's a tangled mess. It's freaking, you know, string and cotton everywhere. That's what's going on, and all we need to do is accept that. And I mean, if Instagram or Facebook, social media wasn't as relevant as it was, would it be as tough as it is? Do we think that, I am a mess or I have this? No, like, it may be exaggerated because of that, but we've all got these things going on. And like that, Gandhi, you know, still struggling, he's struggling with lust, which is one of the hardest things definitely that I've had to struggle with and do struggle with at times. It's like, you know, these greats, they're on this path and they still have these issues. So maybe it's not so much about getting rid of them, it's what are your choices every day? Like, how are you defining yourself? And I know that with my own addictions, it's like if I've succumbed to lust or drugs, or it's like, because they were my main ones, addictions, sexual addictions and drugs, and it's like stuck in them. I think, God damn it, you know, I've done it again, or you fell through, and then you spring back up, the foot comes off the pedal, and it happens. It's like, just a base level, not rejecting them, not denying that they exist within you.
Not feeling guilty.
Not feeling guilty about it. Like, we're human. And the level of consciousness we're on, they say, is like 3%. And you've got people like Gandhi and people, you know, who are higher up on the levels of consciousness scale for sure. Ours is 3%. And we do the best we can, but without the beating ourselves up and just knowing that we are all human. You know, what we're going through, somebody else has been through or is also experiencing it as well. So it's okay. And it's just, how long do we want to feel like that for? Can we release that tension again and go, that's the solution I need? Gentle with the process, speeding up where we can, but being gentle and honest and open with ourselves, because it's the Kali Yuga, man. Like, the world's a mess. We're in the destructive periods, and
it is, and we have to make the most of it.
Yeah.
We really do.
Great time to be alive. Like, define ourselves now.
Yeah.
The more darkness there is, the stronger the light that's going to shine, and that is defined what energy we're carrying around and what do we want, how selfless we can be.
And it's through your actions. Like, we can talk words on this podcast and say,
we could just be chatting our own egos up here.
Exactly,
and
we can be stroking our own ego at the moment, but it's the actions that you take, and it's the subtleties of your actions that you take as well. And other people can observe them. And I remember reading, I don't know if it was the Gita or whether it was from someone else, and it definitely was from Hinduism, maybe Sadhguru, but the person said that you should never compliment yourself in any way. So even if you find, like, this is the Eastern approach, even if you find, like, okay, I'm really good at this, or I'm really good at this, you shouldn't compliment yourself in a way that elevates you. So you can say, I'm good at, I don't know, typing, or I'm good at playing cricket, or I'm good at playing football, or breathwork, or you're a bow staff, that's great. But you never elevate yourself and think, I'm damn good. Wow, I'm proud of myself for being good. It's the pride that strokes the ego, and that's when you're back again, starting again from ground one, where you have to kind of break that ego down, and you have to, like we said, the analogy of the seeds and the weeds. Does the actual flower itself become the weed? So, yeah, and it's a really fascinating process, and I think we mentioned this previously, but sharing this with the rest of the world on a platform that no one knows you on is dangerous. Having these sort of conversations with a person that knows you quite well is the perfect sort of situation to be in. So when they talk about guys should open up, yes, guys should open up, but maybe not to the rest of the world. Maybe in their little smaller groups or their friends and stuff. That's the time to open up to individuals that know you and will not judge you when you say certain things. But in a platform, whether they judge you on a positive note or a negative note, is extremely dangerous. And especially since social media has only been around for 10 years. So
and it's such a big point with the social media being such a short amount of time and how we use it, because that person's sharing out there, I'll share mine.
Yes.
And then Fight Club, I think Fight Club's a really good analogy for what we're saying at the time, like Tyler Durden's philosophy on things that, when you said about the superheroes, I always dreamed of being Spider-Man. Like, any power would be Spider-Man, swinging around and cool. And you always sort of put it on that archetype of being the hero, while how many, one of the big reasons in the gym, pumping, getting big muscles, being strong, looking the role and whatnot, and like Tyler Durden's view on it is that you're not that individual snowflake, and the world is messed up, and you stop trying to be perfect because you can't be, and it's like there's something in that. And I don't think it's nihilistic if you've got the balance and the understanding of the things that you are all of this stuff. It's just, what do you want to not display, but what do you want to bring into the world, which attribute of it. Acknowledge that the darkness and the crappy parts are there, but you don't succumb to it. You accept it. There was an episode of the Clone Wars once, and it was where Yoda was fighting the dark shadow of himself, and he couldn't defeat it, he couldn't kill it. It was only till he accepted it but left it. Right. As that realization comes, you go, you can't defeat your darkness, you can't kill it and just be this full being of light. Well, maybe to that point of enlightenment that we want to get to, but you can't destroy it. You have to know that it's there and not let it overcome you.
Yes.
And it's like you tame it in a way. You tame it.
That's a beautiful analogy. Star Wars, all the stuff that we mentioned today in terms of the media that we're talking about, they have really deep underlying themes, and it just reminded me of the vigilante complex, where you think, this is one of the reasons why vigilantes don't work in today's world. In a fictional world, yes, you can get away with it, and even like in certain fictional worlds, when they explore the idea quite deeply, it doesn't work. Like, for example, Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. In that world, Batman caused more problems than if he didn't exist in that world. If he just let things be, people like the Joker would not come about. That was created, that was breeded because the existence of Batman created such an individual. So we just have to be very mindful about this. And again, the individual usually is us. Like you said, it's the shadow self. You are not willing to face yourself in the mirror and say, am I the issue? And when we try and put the issue on other people and say, they're the problem, it's a lot easier to say, okay, we just need to eradicate them, as opposed to looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I need to eradicate this issue, or not even eradicate it, but I need to accept this issue, and I need to, like you said, be aware when it does come into play, and maybe brush it aside, or maybe really try and tackle it then, but not always thinking that if I get rid of it once, it's going to be gone forever. You know, so
it definitely isn't. And that as well, man, like with the Batman analogy, it's the world is the reflection. Like whatever we're feeling is like, okay, I can help in this way. I'm going to get rid of that problem. That's all you're looking for is that problem. That mirror aspect of you will be out there somewhere. It's like, I'm holier than this, or that's an issue, or I'm going to save it this way, or I'm going to teach everybody to breathe. There's always going to be people who can't breathe correctly and they're struggling. And I could be hell-bent on, I will not stop till I've cured this. The world is way bigger and has way bigger grand intentions than what we're capable of amassing. It's only our limited ego that thinks it's going to solve these issues. But there's reasons why we have these issues, these problems, our own karmas, our own things to untangle, our own understandings. If I've not felt shit, I won't get this bounce back into my spirituality. It's become stronger because of it. But it's having the mindset of doing this up and down thing, not letting that happen again is so relevant, but going, the fire's in me again. Let's be smoother with it this time. Learning the craft of pottery, making the pot so it's not falling apart or it's not, overly grand. It's like, okay, you've got to maneuver with it. So whatever element we're at, the mirror reflection will be out there. This is why becoming selfless or empty inside, empty in the sense of spacious, because I think empty comes across as a cold word, but what we are, the purity of what we are without having to fix and amend and resist or oppose. All of it, space inside and doing what comes for you in that Zen state. That book, Zen and the Art of Archery, man, great.
Yeah.
But I think that'll be a chat for another time.
We'll talk about it in the next one, but I'll just finish this off with an analogy that really describes everything that we just said. It's by an ISKCON monk called Gaur Gopal Das, and he says that material what's the word I'm looking for? Material pursuit breeds information, like it brings you information, but spiritual pursuit brings you transformation. So a pure intended spiritual pursuit will bring you awareness, and you will realize that, okay, this is something that I want to focus on. I want to internalize everything, focus on this, and let the external take care of itself, as long as I'm fine on the inside and I'm doing the best I can on the inside. Like, again, the actions will speak for themselves. You don't need to say anything. But then if you're chasing the materialistic aspect, not in the sense that I want cars, I want women, I want fame, in the sense that I'm going to externalize it and I'm going to solve it in the outside, that chase will only breed information, but not transformation. But yeah, perfect, mate. That was amazing.
Yeah.
So this was podcast number 28. It's going to be in the usual areas. It was an amazing podcast. Right, we're done.
Convo, man.
Good. See you guys in the next one.